guys, it's Ivory. Welcome back to my channel where I talk about all things related to mental health and wellness, plants, and days in my life. If you are new to my channel, then welcome. I am a licensed clinical psychologist, and my goal is always to decrease stigma about mental health and to help improve access to mental health services within minority communities. If you did not see the video that I posted earlier this month about decreasing stigma, then go ahead and check that out. Because July is National Minority Mental Health Awareness Month, I wanted to start and end this month with videos specific to ethnic minorities. Today we're going to have a very frank discussion about why it's not only important to see, but to acknowledge and appreciate the racial differences that make us unique. So first, an acknowledgement that whoever you are, whatever your background is, and whatever your cultural customs, traditions, and celebrations are, I see you and I appreciate the beauty in those differences. Now, let's talk about why it's important to see color. I'm going to ask a question, and I want you to type your answer in the comments below. How does your family prepare rice? Don't keep watching this video. Go ahead and type your answer in the comments below. How does your family prepare rice? I saw a post from a professor who said that she asks her students this question at the beginning of every year. This question not only highlights the similarities between people in that most of us eat rice, but if you dig a little bit deeper, it also highlights differences between groups. If I filled a room with 100 people of different cultures and just asked them if they eat rice, most people would say, yes, I do eat rice, or my family eats rice. And if you stop there, you could come to the conclusion that we are all the same because we all eat rice. But if I ask that original question of how does your family prepare rice, you start to see differences emerge across cultures based on what types of rice you cook, how often you eat rice, and whether the rice is a side dish or if it's the main meal. And you can see differences in other things too, such as how people prepare and drink coffee, and weddings and baby showers, and so on. When people say, I don't see color, they're usually well-meaning, trying to be inclusive and fair. And sometimes people say that they don't see color because talking about race, a topic which is ever so prevalent in the lives of minorities, talking about race can be uncomfortable. But here's why taking a colorblind approach can actually do more harm than good. Researchers have characterized color blindness as it relates to race as being comprised of two related ideas. One that emphasizes sameness and one that emphasizes equal opportunities. And both of these are important to understand. When someone insists that all races are the same, it erases the reality that people literally move through this world differently based on their encounters with race. And it tries to squeeze minorities into the box that is white America, which is a box that throughout our lives, many of us have likely had to squeeze in multiple times. Emphasizing equal opportunities tries to erase the ugly history that is within our country and expects minorities, especially Black people, to catch up to the achievements of white people in less than half the time with less than half the resources. Let's start from childhood. People who argue for a colorblind approach love to say that kids don't see color, so why should we? Well, technically that's not true. By 3 months, kids start preferring faces that are the same race as their caregivers. At 2 years, they start using race to reason about people's behavior. At 2.5 years, they start picking playmates based on race. And by age 5, they actually show similar attitudes about race as adults. So what are these different kinds of experiences that minorities have that are different from white people? Well, more so when I was a child, there wasn't a place where I could look to see myself and other people like me well represented. There was no Doc McStuffins. There was definitely not a Princess Tiana. We just weren't well represented. And these types of experiences continue throughout life. When minorities enter into white social circles, we are automatically expected to know common themes, songs, TV shows, movies that are prevalent in the dominant white culture, which I don't know about any of you, but sometimes when I haven't known those things, it can feel a little bit isolating. I saw a tweet recently that said something along the lines of being Black means having to type for Black people at the end of your Google searches. And this is so real. We don't readily see information that is relevant to us, and we therefore have to seek that information out, which can be exhausting. And then we get to more serious things like blatant racism and microaggressions. To say that you don't see color means that you have willfully chosen to ignore the experiences that make up the everyday lives of minorities. So things like being called a racial slur or being told that the way that your hair naturally grows out of your head is not appropriate for work or for upscale social events. Or someone automatically assuming that because you got into a good school, it must be because of affirmative action or because you're an athlete. Failing to acknowledge that these are differences that people experience based on their background, and failing to acknowledge that these experiences literally shape the way that a person views the world and interacts with other people is frankly wrong. But don't just take my word for it. I brought the receipts to back me up. So let's dive into the research for all you science lovers. Let's dig into my field of mental health first, shall we? Studies have found that therapists who are more aware of racial differences show higher levels of competency working with people of different cultures, and that psychology trainees who hold a colorblind approach show weaker knowledge about working with people of different cultures. So in other words, if you take more of a colorblind approach, you are less likely to be competent at working with people of different cultures and ethnicities. This is very relevant because people ask me all the time, do I need to see a therapist who is the same race as me? And it's hard to answer that question. The short answer is no, you don't need to, but the long answer is that there are so many nuances that contribute to if that person is going to be competent to work with you or not. I am going to make a video where I dive deeper into this topic, but the takeaway is that practitioners who hold that colorblind approach are less likely to be as competent in working with minorities as practitioners who recognize that there are differences and are able to incorporate into their conceptualization of their clients. So what about everyday people who are not in the field of mental health and are kind of just walking around in their daily lives with these colorblind approaches? Let's dig back into the research. Well, studies have shown that people who take a colorblind approach, despite their intentions to be fair, actually show more prejudicial behaviors. One study had people read an editorial that either had a colorblind approach and emphasized that we are all equal, or had a multicultural approach that emphasized the importance of acknowledging differences, or they read a control editorial that just talked about locally grown foods. This was to prime them with that type of thinking, which is typical of how research works. Participants then had discussions about their own thoughts about racism and about ethnic diversity in schools. The researchers found that when white participants who were primed with that colorblind approach met with minorities to have these discussions about race, they tended to have more standoffish body language and made more offensive and devaluing comments. And you know what's even scarier? They and other research studies have suggested that when someone takes that colorblind approach, it has a negative impact on the cognitive functioning of the minorities that they're interacting with. But did that affect the cognitive functioning of the white people who held that approach? Nope. When they hold that colorblind approach, it even subconsciously influences the way that they interact with minorities, which then can impact the mental and cognitive well-being of those minorities. I could go on and on about the research, but Google Scholar is free, so I encourage you to continue to learn. I hope that this video will aid in learning, acknowledging, appreciating, and embracing the differences that make us all unique. Don't be afraid to talk about race. Don't be afraid to ask someone about their experiences. And don't be afraid to really dig deep and to figure out how those experiences may be similar to or different from your own. There is so much beauty and uniqueness in Black and brown cultures, and that deserves to be acknowledged and to be celebrated. It's time to make an upgrade and start seeing color. As always, check in with yourself. Is your cup full? Thanks so much for watching. Bye.